What happens when cutting-edge technology meets the wildest corners of the Earth? Well, in today's episode, I'm joined by Sophie Maxwell. She's the CEO of the Connected Conservation Foundation, and they are helping reshape the way that we protect endangered species and their habitats across 15 different countries. From real-time surveillance powered by Cisco's wide area network technologies to AI-enhanced ecosystem monitoring. Her team is building a digital infrastructure in some of the most remote and hostile environments on the planet. And I think we often associate innovation and technology with businesses, cities, or even smart homes. But what about rainforests, grasslands, marine reserves? Sophie is going to join me today and walk us through how sensors, IoT networks, satellite imagery and field data are all giving conservation teams a 360-degree view of their landscapes. But this story goes far beyond rhinos and anti-poaching efforts. It's actually about building resilience both in ecosystems and the communities that live alongside them. So it's my hope that my conversation today will bring a fresh perspective on the role of technology in environmental restoration and biodiversity protection and the race to secure 30% of our planet by 2030. And Sophie will also discuss the importance of workforce development, how the Cisco Networking Academy is creating a new generation of conservation technologists, and why cybersecurity is critical when data is flowing across vulnerable regions. So, how is digital transformation powering conversation? What can we learn from it about solving the challenges that we all face on a global scale? Well, with that scene set, it's time for me to officially introduce you to my guest. So thank you for joining me here at Cisco Live in San Diego. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Neil. I'm Sophie Maxwell. I'm Executive Director of Connected Conservation Foundation. And we're a very small non-profit working to channel the resources, technologies, equipment, engineering of technology companies to save nature in the field.
And that's one of the reasons I was excited to speak with you today, because one of the things I try and do on this podcast every day is get people thinking differently about how technology impacts areas that you don't associate with technology. And when you're thinking about saving nature, conservation, etc., you don't automatically think of technology. So how did the idea to combine advanced IoT and networking technology with conservation efforts, how did that first take shape? And were there any changes that you faced in bringing these two almost separate worlds together?
Yeah, sure. So we as a human race are ploughing, chopping our way through nature and destroying the very things we're dependent on for clean air, water, plants and animals for food, and that web of life we're all part of. And the remedy to that is protected areas. So protected areas, there's an ambition from international organisations to protect 30% of the planet by 2030. And protected areas need to be real, they need to be effective, they need to be measurable, and technology has a massive role to play. So we've actually started by looking at a pilot site in South Africa where we got engineers and technology providers together with conservation experts and said, how can we make your work 10 times more effective, more at scale and over a bigger area to give you eyes and ears to see more? And at the time, we put together solutions that created a reserve area network across the protected areas. These are remote regions, they're hostile, and they don't have cellular cover or satellite communications. So we had to put in a Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN networks across the reserve to bring data back from remote areas to a central operations room. And there it can be aggregated to give conservation professionals visibility across the whole protected area. Loads of challenges with it. We've learned a lot over time, which have refined a solution that's now replicated across 35 different protected areas. But, elephants are very naughty. They like to dig up cables. They're very hostile, complex environments. So you might put a bit of technology down. The next day there's a flood there and you're like, oh, where's my technology? Oh, doesn't exist anymore. So we learnt and we refined and, that overcame those challenges to really get a blueprint and validated design that could work for many different protected areas in terms of real-time monitoring and improving the effectiveness of strengthening these areas.
So you've got the technology's in place, you've got real-time data from sensors, satellite imagery and networks. How is all that technology transforming day-to-day decision-making for teams in the field and in these remote conservation areas? Anything you can share around that?
Well, just think about it. I mean, we had digital transform every part of our lives.
Yes.
In conservation areas, it was paper-based, write down that you saw a species on this day and I saw it again on this day. So with data, they can really start to look at 3 pillars. The first one is early warning systems. I need to get information on when potential poachers are coming into my protected area to take things like rhino horn or pangolin scales. The next is human-wildlife conflict. I want to know when a pride of lions might be going next to a community so I can get an early warning and bring my children in so keep them safe from harm. And then also climate like floods and drought to really kind of help you manage natural resources for both wildlife, but the communities who live in these areas alongside the wildlife. So there's enough water and forage for everybody. So early warning systems, but then the second thing is ecosystem monitoring. So these areas are huge and you want to understand the health of these ecosystems and the changing state of nature over time so that you can say that your conservation interventions are having an effect, prove that to financiers, unlock new financial instruments that will bring funding into your park because you have the data to say, yes, this is actually making a difference. And then lastly is really kind of empowering communities as stewards of their own natural land. So employing them and getting their jobs for data collection so that they can be the ones being able to manage this data and make the decisions on how they live and coexist with their wildlife and their natural heritage.
And many thousands of miles away, we find ourselves in San Diego today at Cisco Live. A question I've got to ask is, what role has Cisco played in scaling these projects from a single reserve to operations in, I think I'm right in saying this, around 15 countries? So how do you collaborate on both strategy and implementation? It seems like a really interesting partnership here.
Yeah, well, it's 10 years of partnership we're celebrating this year, which we are thrilled to be here and talk about. And Cisco have provided the hardware solutions to build the networks over these landscapes and bring the data back to a beefy Cisco server, which helps aggregate it all. And that is really kind of growing out now to be a solution that needs to incorporate things like AI and satellite data, which is massive. And with Cisco, we're really brainstorming all the time. So at this conference right now, we've got top architects' minds thinking about what's next. What does the next 5 years bring? We've got lots of siloed AI solutions. We've got lots of kind of screens that different protected area managers have to go to this for one solution and this for one solution. And how do we build the integrated applications of the future to make it easy for protected area managers, make it easy for governments and environmental ministers to measure and achieve national policy targets around protecting 30% of the planet? Wow. So, data and technology, data-driven conservation has a massive role to play in the future of how we as humanity live in balance with nature.
Another reason I was excited to speak with you today is if we look down our news feeds, it's full of stories of technology removing jobs, technology being blamed for dividing communities. But when I was reading your story, it shows a refreshing side of the story. So in what ways are you seeing technology helping local communities, not just in terms of conservation, but also things like education, skills development and job creation? Because this is a story we don't hear enough, I think.
Well, I think as the technologies for nature protection, restoration and monitoring are growing, so too are the skills, the need for skills to sustain and maintain them. Yeah. And what we're seeing is the rise of kind of this role of the protected area technician, someone who kind of keeps it all going. So if it all goes down, you call on them and go, we're in the middle of a poaching incident, please, we need to get our systems back up to see where our teams are, where our dogs are, where the poachers are potentially coming into the reserve. They're going to call on the protected area technician. And that's a hugely important role. And from our experience, within communities and people who work in these areas, there's talent. There's so much opportunity to give them training with the help of Cisco Network Academy. And so we've used a lot of Cisco Network Academy content, such as a cybersecurity course and the networking course, but wrapped it in a conservation-specific curriculum and providing that free as an online course to help them learn and grab these jobs which are emerging within the sector. And we're also, as a foundation, sponsoring those top talent to give them internships in these protected areas so that we can professionalize this career path. You know, it is a new career path, but we're seeing more and more the need with a long queue of people who want to take the training. So very excited to launch that next month.
Absolutely love that. And as we look towards this protection of 30% of the planet's land by 2030, how important is it to equip these protected areas that we're talking about today with digital infrastructure to meet that goal? Because it's a big goal, but achievable. And how important is that and the technology?
Well, we not only have to preserve what is still intact. To reach that goal, we have to double protected areas on a terrestrial level. We have to quadruple marine protected areas. And it's not just about drawing a map and saying that's protected. Yeah. It has to be real, effective and measurable, as I said. And protected areas, they face a huge amount of challenges. We've talked about some of them already, but land use change and encroachment from agriculture, human-wildlife conflict, poaching, you know, all of these pressures that are coming on protected areas through the rise of human populations around them. This isn't going to stop. And we need the digital infrastructure to help multiply the capacity on the ground for kind of an extraordinary leap forward in being able to kind of work with communities to collaboratively tackle these pressures and secure these natural ecosystems for us all, for humanity, really, as a global safety net for everyone.
And with so much sensitive data flowing across remote environments, a question I've got to ask is around cybersecurity. How are you addressing that? And also data integrity in so many different conservation networks. Is this top of mind too?
Yeah, it's coming up in many of the countries where we work at the moment. The need for secure sovereign solutions managed locally in country with top security and best practice is top of mind. You know, if you think about all the technology, we need to ensure that it isn't used for harm. So it has to have the best two-factor authentication. It has to have the best encryption so that actually it isn't used against us in this fight to save wildlife and natural ecosystems. And so, yeah, we are working with Cisco at the moment, looking at their cybersecurity systems, data centers and infrastructure to be able to adapt and deliver these sovereign solutions in country.
So I'm curious, how do you see things like AI and analytics, especially through Cisco's recent innovations? How do you see these things playing a larger role in predicting things like environmental threats that we've talked about, or even improving wildlife tracking? When you're seeing the keynotes and all the announcements coming out, is it setting off light bulb moments?
Yeah. Well, conservation is already adopting many AI solutions, whether that's computer vision AI on camera trap images to detect individual species in those images to monitor the state of species in a particular protected area, or audio acoustics of a particular bird call, or even the reaction of birds to tigers in an area. You can tell that there's tigers in there because the birds are making a particular call. So AI is going through these signatures and making these identifications and classifications. But one of the exciting things that really kind of will be the future is aggregating all this data. So, for example, we have a partnership with the Airbus Foundation who provide very high resolution satellite imagery from space. So coupling the IoT data and the field reports with a bird's eye view from space can really kind of give you a bigger, wide area insight on early warning systems, whether that's deforestation or monitoring change over time, whether that's a spread of an invasive species in a particular area or the state of species in perhaps remote regions where you can actually see the individual species on the ground and you would be able to assess their population numbers, like a project for counting albatross nests that we have in a very remote island off the coast of New Zealand. So that the opportunities are incredible, and it's going to be really powerful to bring all these use cases together to really monitor the health of our planet at large.
And I'm curious, if you were to look back at when you first had these ideas and implementing technology, was there anything has surprised you most about the impact that technology has had in the field? Whether it be reducing poaching to restoring trust between communities and conservation teams, any big surprises?
I'm surprised every day by the individual use cases that technology is used for, whether that's identifying fires or perhaps even robots going underground planting seagrass. There's so many variety of different applications. But what kind of really surprises me is when they come together, and it's the integration that's powerful. And so, through the work that we do with Cisco, Actility and the Earth Ranger platform, being able to integrate many different sensors, analytics and other kind of features is really changing the game to be able to give these areas integrity, make sure they're connected, make sure they're safe havens for endangered species so that they can recover their numbers, and really kind of have healthy vegetation that will absorb CO2 from our climate and provide us with the lungs of the planet. So, yeah, it's an incredibly exciting time. Each country has different challenges, and it's about what works for them to integrate to make that difference. And we need to be more ambitious, bolder, and work faster, I'm afraid.
Well, I think that is a powerful moment to end on. And for anyone listening, maybe inspired from our conversation today, maybe want to support your work, find out more about the work that you do, where would you like to point everyone listening?
So we have a website. Yeah. It is connectedconservation.foundation. So please go there, read more about our work, and we'd love to hear from you.
Well, I'll have links to everything, including your social channels. Make it nice and easy for people to find you. And I do ask everyone listening to check out your website. It's fantastic work that you're doing. There's so much digital noise and hate and division everywhere. I just love what you're doing, how you're using technology to bring communities together, and the help that you're doing on this little tiny planet that we all share together. So thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thanks, Neil. Yeah, let's keep going.
So what if the same tools that monitor enterprise networks could also help save rhinos, elephants and endangered ecosystems? For me, today's discussion with Connected Conservation Foundation, I think it offered a compelling look at what happens when innovation shifts from Silicon Valley to the savannas of Africa and beyond. It was great to hear how real-time environmental data is allowing rangers to prevent poaching before it happens, and how satellite imagery is revealing patterns in animal migrations and climate impacts. And also how local communities are gaining access to new opportunities through education and technology. And the partnership between Cisco and CCF, it doesn't seem to be about hardware and connectivity, or not just those things. It's more about designing systems that scale, and scale with a purpose. And Sophie, I think she reminded us that conservation isn't a one-size-fits-all effort. It requires cultural understanding, collaboration, and adaptable technology, all of which should reflect local realities. So whether it is tracking elephants through collar data or using AI to analyse bird calls, the future of protecting our planet may rely on our ability to integrate and apply the tools that we've built for other industries. So what if your next big tech project wasn't about boosting profits, but preserving life? And if it is, I want to hear from you. I want to hear about your story and share it on here. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. Love to hear from you. And I hope you found Sophie's story today as inspiring as I did. But it's back to the show floor for me. I'll be back again soon with another guest, but thank you for listening, and I will speak with you all again very soon.